Awesome.
Live.
Live.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. We're the Union, and we have real talk about personal growth. And today we have one brand new guest. We have Anubhav on, and we have Este, who is a returning champion. So a little bit more about our guests. Este Marie is passionate about coaching others into loving and embracing all parts of themselves fully. She desires to bring more consciousness, particularly to issues such as self-compassion, body image, emotional wellness, and sexuality and sex work. Anubhav, Jain helps founders grow their ideas into sustainable businesses and create a life of freedom and ease. He is on a mission to help 100 founders launch their business or startup in 2020. With over 15 years of experience helping companies like PayPal and other Fortune 500 companies, startups, and nonprofits launch new products, he is now committed to helping those in the early stages when it's the most challenging. Union show creator Keith Bellino is a master coach with over 4,000 hours of one-on-one coaching under his belt and has taught over 1,000 students on the subjects of sex, dating, relationships, and intimacy. His main purpose is to help emotionally adolescent adults grow into becoming fully expressed and integrated. My name is Cindy Riak, and I'm based in Silicon Valley. I coach startup founders and entrepreneurs increase their relational intelligence so that their investment and connections create the success you're looking for. I'm also a filmmaker, and I tell stories that connect us as human beings more deeply. So today we are talking about changing course when managing expectations and ideas of success. Keith, what does that mean?
That's a damn good question, Cindy. But don't worry, I'll make it up as I go.
Yeah.
So, this is often the shows around the beginning of the year center on, review and outlook. And a lot of our shares this week when we were building the topic were about just looking at places that we had ideas about ourselves, where we thought we were headed in certain directions, and then how we got taken off that path, how we had to change course, how that was better, or how it worked, how it didn't work, and then just what do we think success is that has us be aimed in a particular way, and then how do we slowly or maybe not so slowly, change or adjust that idea of success as we have to change course along the path. So that's the overview. Now we'll just go around the room and give everyone a chance to say like a 1-minute viewpoint of the topic this week, and you guys they're allowed to say anything they want about the topic. So we go lady first, and so Este, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah, I would like to start off by saying I don't generally like the idea of New Year's resolutions. I like, goals are great, intentions are good, but I think anything with too many expectations, my system tends to have like resistance to. Like I like the idea of like slow integration and just like I feel like it's more sustainable generally, and that's been my experience, is really just, I feel like, I've been kind of noticing lately when it comes to New Year's resolutions, I have it's almost like a teenage element to it a little bit. And I'm like, and I know that's a lot of my own stuff. And I also know, like, I just genuinely believe that like integration over time, and I feel like having too many like harsh expectations on ourselves is just generally sets us up for suffering. So yeah, it's kind of my general idea on it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Anubhav?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting topic, because I was just, as you were bringing that up and talking about that, I was just like looking back at my the last like 15 to 20 years of my life, and just sort of thinking like when I was in my teens or early 20s, I had like this specific vision and goals of all the things that I wanted in my life. Most of them were sort of in some ways aligned with what society tells you that you need to have to be happy. You know, stuff like having a good job and a car and a house and you know, all the things that people need to have. And so I think I sort of took on those things as my personal goals alongside certain other things that I thought that I wanted in my life. And I feel like I worked pretty hard in my early 20s. You know, left India, left my parents' home to move to the US to be able to have the things that I wanted and accomplish the things that I wanted a little bit faster and sooner than I could have had I stayed in India, at least from my perspective. And I feel like, you know, when I got everything that I wanted, that I thought I wanted and that was expected, I was not very happy. You know, none of those successes made me feel any fulfilled or, you know, get me the sense that I thought I was going to get having those. And then, you know, I created some changes in my life that sort of set me on this path that had so many twists and turns of the unexpected. You know, like some really good highs and ups and some really, really low lows. You know, the kind that I had not experienced before. And I was like, I don't even know I can take these on. And, you know, just looking back at the last few years, it's like the stuff that was unplanned, unexpected, that I had no idea, you know, would ever happen to me in my life has brought like the most growth, the most transformation, and made me the person I am today, where I can feel confident, you know, even to put a bio out like the one that Cindy read out, where I'm like, oh, I support other people in doing this, you know, that I not have read 20 years ago.
Yeah, thank you. Cindy, you want to go next?
Speaking of changing course, maybe 15 minutes before I got into the green room with you, Keith, I mean, I was like sobbing my eyes out and spraying at Duncan, like, that's it, I'm quitting. I'm not going to be an actor anymore because time is moving this way, and I just lost all my equipment, and not only that, but insurance won't cover it. And like, fuck it all. Like, it's just like this enormous amount of grief and pain, and I know, like, if I wasn't working on my career, it's not just my career, it's my dreams. Like, I'm just feeling like this intensity of like, wow, I'm being thwarted and I don't know what I'm doing. And it's already been really tough. So I'm just really sitting in like this stew of like, oh shit, all of these things are happening. And I need to get back on the horse. I need to be resilient and like just get on with it. But there's such a huge part of me that just wants to give up. It's really intense right now. I just found out this morning my insurance won't cover $6,000 worth of stuff that was stolen out of my car on Friday. So yeah, just really intense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking about like course changes and success ideas, and you know, I spent the majority of my life without a lot of what I'll call like mainstream success in terms of money or family or property ownership. And then I have had a lot of success in terms of freeing myself of conditioning and learning how to access my emotional states and how to be with myself in stressful times, and you know, like all these kind of very esoteric things. And now the course in my life is changing. I'm taking on a CEO position for a software company, which is a very kind of very mainstream success, you know, modern thing to do. And what does that look like in terms of success, and how does it shake me up? There's been a lot of self-sabotage earlier in my life. There's been a lot of fear of success. There's been a lot of that's how my relationship to responsibility shows up. Like, I don't want to, identity programs are like, I don't want more success because I don't want more responsibility, because then I'll have to give up the identity that it's someone else's job to take care of me, basically. Like, there's like a chain of events there for me. So that fear of success for me has been a lot around this kind of adolescent identity program, or maybe even younger than that, of not wanting to give up this idea that someone will come along and be the parents that I always wanted, whether it was like a mentor or an organization or like somewhere. But at this stage of the game, I've had enough evidence that that's probably not going to happen. And so, like, taking on more responsibility means that have let enough go of that identity to be able to have more success, as I define it, as more like a mainstream success. So that's my kind of general take on today's topic. So, and so thank you guys all for joining us out there in the world. If you're just joining us, it's the Union Real Talk About Personal Growth. This week we've got our returning guest, Este Marie, and our brand new guest, Anubhav Jain. And as usual, you've got your hosts, Cindy and me. And we now have the 30 minutes or so to talk about this topic. So anyone can jump in. It's total popcorn style. And what do you think so far? What's on your mind?
I think just an example that was coming up in my mind was when I was in grad school in Arizona. I had just finished, and I wasn't sure how long it would take for me to find a job and what city or state it was going to be. So the house I was living in was a tiny place, and I was like, I'd have to move out of here pretty soon. And I don't know if I would be able to find another person when I move out. So I decided to get a housemate early on, as soon as I graduated, saying like, hey, I'll just move out in like a month. And then, you'll just have to put up with me for like a little bit. And then 3 months go by and I have no job and no signs of getting a job, because the economy was like really bad or recovering. And, Arizona isn't the best place to find work, especially in my field. So one day, this person comes up to me and is like, Anubhav, you have to leave this house. And I'm like, oh my God, like, this is my house and you're kicking me out of it. What am I going to do? I have like no place to go. I don't have like a bunch of money to spend, and I don't have anything else to spend. And I was so mad. I'm like, how can you do this? I think the one thing I was good at the time, which I think I've sort of, I can learn from my younger self a little bit, was like, then the next day I was like, I wonder what good can come out of this. Like, instead of thinking like, oh my God, this is the worst thing that's happening to me right now, what's good that's going to happen from this situation? Like, how can I take it positively? And I don't know how long it took me, maybe like a day, maybe a week, but it wasn't very long at the time. And when I switched my mindset to be like, okay, what else is possible and how is this happening for me? I got an invitation from my cousin who lives in California to be like, hey, why don't you take all your stuff and come to California? And and come stay with me for as long as you need, and look for a job here. And thanks to that, like I was so comfortable and cozy in my house in Arizona, I might have never left. And thanks to that little kick in the butt, I left. I got this opportunity, and California is where all the jobs were in my field. And I moved, and I got like a job like almost immediately. So yeah, just wanted to share that story. That's what was coming up for me a lot in regards to all of that.
Yeah. It's interesting. And what I'm hearing you say is there was, in the moment where you were transitioning from grad school to getting a job, like there was like this attachment, like this is my home. And if I can get a job, and this would happen. And then because like there was like what you would, I guess, like what some people would call like a setback. And you had this experience that was like completely, I mean, there are probably more positive Ks here in California than there are in Arizona.
Yeah. And back in the day, I was fresh from India. I didn't know the difference between Arizona and California. It was all the same to me. I'm like, it's the US. Like, here I am in Arizona. It's like, who knows what California is about? I would have never thought of moving to California.
And is there more positive Ks? It's like, are you glad that happened?
Oh my God, like 20 years or 15 years later, it's like, yes, this is the place to be. Like, it could not have turned out better. And things have just like slowly gotten better, and just all the experiences I've had. I originally lived in San Jose, then I moved to Mountain View, and then I discovered San Francisco. And so it's been like a fantastic experience living in California. Just, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of my experience, like, I guess, big life event is when I left Bible college, like, what is this, 2020, like 8 years ago. And, that was probably one of my biggest, like, course changes, because there was a lot of, like, religious, like, programming attached to it. Like, basically, in my mind, I was like, I am leaving my life's purpose. I am backsliding. I am going against God himself. It was like, it was a lot. And I remember like the impact of those emotions in my body, and my chronic pain and fatigue kicked in a couple months ago, or a couple months after. And I remember I literally woke up and like my whole body hurt. And, that was like the impact of that for me. I was just filled with regret. And I mean, just to have like such a belief, I genuinely believed like, oh my gosh, I'm like basically committing spiritual suicide. My life is over. I am going straight to hell in a handbasket. I'm forsaking God, who's done so much for me. I mean, yeah, it was like quite a course change. And
Catholic programming, I know what that feels like.
Oh yeah. It was a lot. And, and it's just crazy how a couple of years I lived with that afterwards. And then, in the past, 4 years, how my life how in perspective, it's like, oh, like that was needed for me to get to where I'm at now. And like, I actually have spirituality now, and, belief in God, and just how it all works together. I just like realized like a lot of that belief that I had was it's a pattern that I carry often, like, oh, if I'm not doing this big thing, oh my gosh, like this is the end of the world. And so I've been able to like challenge that belief within myself a lot. I've had a couple of other big like course changes in the past couple of years, and I remember it was like shocking to my system, also in the form of being asked to leave a house at a certain point. And it was just very quick and very intense. And it was like, but it was also like a peace, I felt like peace come over me, like as soon as it happened. And I was also a mess and in grief and tired and sad. But I was like, you know what, this is what's needed. And I always like think for me, like I'm so stubborn and like set in my own ways that like, God has so much like leniency with me and mercy with me in a way, like, you know, or the universe, whatever, my higher power, because it's like, you stubborn bitch, like just fucking quit, like. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that this conversation has gravitated towards like early understanding of what like a true course change. Like it's like looking back on like early course changes, you know, like, oh, how did I think things were gonna go, and then how did I have to go when, you know, life handed me something else. I think that's a great ongoing reminder of like, how do we handle that? How do we face that? How it, because it's really hard. I mean, just like anytime you've got an idea of how your life is going to go, and then something happens. I mean, life is chaos, right? So, you know, then especially when earlier in our lives, I mean, like I'm older and wiser now, but
Got the beard to match too.
I think it's just a lot easier to look back and reflect on it than be in the moment, you know? Like I could be like, oh my God, how the hell is my life going through a course change right now? All I can see is like the things that are not working out and how things are a mess. You know?
great.
And there's no way to like look at it. Like it's a lot harder to look at the bigger picture and be like, oh, I am just like in this big, huge hole right now, and I'm on my way to climb out of it. And look how amazing my life is going to be over there, right? Versus having been through it, and on the other side, you know, it's like Steve Jobs said, you can only connect the dots looking back and not forward. So I think this topic of changing course, it feels easier. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're reflecting, because like I'm kind of trying to map what you guys are saying over to what's happening for me right now, and I'm just like, I don't have a single clue what I'm supposed to be surrendering to right now. Like I don't know what is needed of me, and then I get confused and I get self-doubty, and I'm like, is universe pointing to I should not be an actor? Like okay, like what the fuck does that mean? Like my entire life has been geared for this. Like all I want to do is be an actor. Like what's happening right now? And it's emotional and it's ridiculous. Like I just don't, I have fucking no clue what's happening. Like I'm getting my ass handed to me. Like seriously, ever since I turned 33, at the end of November, like I got into a car accident, and like Keith was there the day I got in a car accident. Our car is still in the shop because the people who are fixing our car ran our car and like lost our door. It's just been like fucking chaos for months. And then I'm just like, what is happening? Like, why is this happening? I went to my mom's the other day and she was like, it's your fault that your stuff got stolen. It's your fault that all these bad things are happening. And then I'm just like, I'm regressing. I'm turning into the 4-year-old where like everything is my fault. And I have like, it's like a massive rock I can't pull myself under. Like, it's just like, what the fuck is happening? like, why is this happening to me right now? I'm 33 years old. I'm way too old to be an actor. I'm fucking doing it anyways. And then like the universe is just getting my ass handed to me, like just fucking pounding me. Like, and I'm like, what the fuck? It's just like, I can't handle anymore right now. I don't know what I'm doing. And then we have NLP this weekend. That's great.
Yeah, perfect timing.
I'm all my circles.
It's kind of funny. You reminded me that you're 33, and I was just thinking. I mean, it seems like 33 is some sort of a magical age of transformation, because when I was 33, another big, huge change happened in my life that just has completely shifted everything in my life that I could have ever imagined. To share a little bit more, you know, when I was not 33 yet, like just before that, the prior 4 years of my life like had been the most amazing in a lot of ways. Like I had an amazing job and all the other things that I talked about that one should have. And I had started running marathons, which, you know, like for me, I'm not a runner. Like I could not run a mile. And that's something I got into and started loving. And at that point, I'd run 4 marathons. And then I was like, oh, that's not good enough. I'm going to go run triathlons. So I did 2 triathlons. And, you know, I'd never swim in the ocean. And, you know, so like I was on such a high in life. I'm like, oh my God, like, look at me. Like my body feels amazing. My life is amazing. I can do anything I set my mind to. Like, you know, look at me go from like 0 miles of running to where I'm at right now.
Mm.
And then boom, one day it felt like instantly all went away. I went to a chiropractor and he messed up an adjustment and I was in bed for like 2 years in excruciating pain. Like it was hard for me to do anything. I could not walk, run, sit. It was hard for me even to just like lay on bed. And I was having, you know, some of, I mean, it's hard to compare any emotions, but, you know, just like, oh my God, like, why is this happening to me? Like, I'm 33, my life is good. Just when I had everything figured out in my life, like this happened. You know, the favorite thing about my life is running, and now that just got taken away from me. And I felt so alone also because, you know, my parents are in India, my entire family is in India, and I'm here by myself. So I'm like, wow, why is this happening to me? And I struggled with that for a long time. And no matter what I did to recover, like, you know, going to regular doctors and such, it didn't help. So, you know, like a few months go by and I have this other sort of thought like I had before. I'm like, well, I can't move physically, but I feel like my brain's working. And I'm committed to personal growth. And up until this point, I thought like I was God. I was like amazing, like I could do anything, I could accomplish anything. Maybe there is something that I need to learn. Maybe there is something I need to grow. And so it brought, I don't know, maybe I can look back and say it brought some humility, but I wouldn't have called it that way. I was like, okay, whatever, you know. So that was the very first time I'm like, maybe I need help from other people. And I went and saw a life coach for the very first time with an open mind. And that person was fantastic, completely transformed my life. Like I went from feeling such a victim, such out of control of my life, given the physical condition I was in, to feeling really empowered about my life. And that just shifted the course and put me on this path of personal growth and transformation that has eventually led me to, you know, the NLP work Cindy and I have been doing, and just everything else that's come in the last few years of experimenting with. And I could talk about that forever, but it's been painful the last 8 years because I feel like I'm still sort of recovering from that blow. I just got back into running this week, you know, sort of 8 years later.
Wow.
And it's made me the person who I am today. You know, I could never have predicted this. Yeah, it's insanely painful. And I kind of set the age 33 because I was talking to one of my mentors earlier, and you know, just about exactly the same time ago, he's like, oh my God, like this thing happened to me. I want to share here, but about us, you know, it just shifted my life and took everything away that I thought I had in my life and just completely turned things upside down. And then 7-8 years later, he's like, it's been painful and I am the person I am today.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that like I've been kind of, you know, really analyzing like what is it about New Year's resolutions that like what is the deepest thing that like really bothers me about it. And I think that it's like it's just like goal oriented, right? And I don't feel like there's anything wrong with goals, like obviously, you know, and like but I just feel like it's just like a marketing ploy more than anything. It's like, oh, let's like you know, kind of shortchange the process and let's set these intentions. And there's just like a cheap feel to it a lot of the time. And I think that it also depends on the circumstances and the person. But I feel like as a society, I think that there's not enough attention or value placed on the process of getting there. You know, it's all about the goals and like what's the quickest, fastest, cheapest, little effort way to get something. And like I just feel like, you know, like for an example that comes to mind that I feel like a lot of people can relate to, and it's very nuanced, and is like weight loss. You know, someone's like, oh, I want to, you know, lose like 50 pounds and, you know, I met my goal, or I want to be this like CrossFit athlete, or I want to do this. And then, you know, they realize, you know, they've met their goal. But like at the, you know, along with the goal, they also have like body dysmorphia that developed in that process, you know, and I'm totally talking about like my journey too. Like it, you know, it's something I realized, I know I've brought this up before, is like along that process, I realized I'm like, there was a lot that I picked up in this process that, you know, I didn't exactly give a lot of attention to. And so along with my goal and my achievement, I also have these other aspects that weren't given enough attention to. And you know, and it was a learning process, and it was good for me to experience that and see myself inside of that. And this year I actually have more specific goals that I feel like I set because I'm in the place where I can set them healthily for myself, whereas last year it wouldn't have been the same way. I just feel like, you know, when I say like integration over like a slow integration, I think that maybe some goals like we're not ready for, or some things like maybe that's not really the spot, or maybe it's just a quick way to get to something, whereas, you know, the process can be a lot more valuable. Yeah, that's just where my thinking is with it, is like having compassion for yourself along the way, and like being with yourself, like, okay, why do I want this, and why do I get up every day and do this and have this desire? Why do I have this intention? What, or is it, you know, and then even deeper, like, is this to feed, you know, hungry ghosts? Is this like a long-term sustainable desire? Is this like, you know, just to feed my identity programming and my unfulfilled child spots? Is it overcompensation, or is it true desire? You know, all these questions. And
even if it is, is that validated enough?
Yeah, I was
or who, right? So like at which point, like, do I just stop eating because that's just my physical need, like, you know, like it just like, at which point do we like stop, you know, at which point do we say like I want this $2,000 dress just because I just want to be pretty, you know, like how do we validate it?
Yeah, I think that like validating every aspect, especially things like overcompensation, was something I was writing on yesterday. And I was like, yeah, like there are times where like I feel that is at play with me, even though I'm actually genuinely working on, you know, getting to the deeper root of why I do that. And also I can still feel that present with me, you know, like, oh, I did overcompensate a little today, because that did kind of, and just having compassion for that aspect too. Or, you know, I went and I was frivolous today, and that also feeds my needs for attention and my, you know, and okay, and like having that there too, not like, I don't like the whole like, oh, like my life has changed forever and I'll never go back thing, as a general concept, because it's like, what does that even mean? I don't know what that means. You're like,
Totally. I I hear you. What how do you know where you're going in terms of like what you want? Like, I guess like in NLP we talk about it like our desires is like the direction, right? And how we get there is just how things happen. So
Like, how do I feel into my deeper desire, or what I want? Yeah, I think just with practices, writing practices are really good. Desire lists, I think that's really good. That works for me. I know that if I'm crying or upset or just like just kind of grumpy or apathetic when I'm writing desires, often it's like, oh yeah, this is a true, genuine desire, and I don't feel like I can have it on a certain level. I don't feel like I truly believe it's gonna happen. I like that, and I think just taking the time to like let myself go slow in everyday activities and listening to the subtle messages from my body. That was another thing that I recently did. Was I was doing this program for the past couple of months that was very fast paced, high intensity, goal oriented, and I like was not listening to my body. I was just going along with the style of the program and ended up really paying for it, and was like, oh, like I can't just live and not listen to my body. Especially like knowing what I know now. Like I know the the repercussions of it. It just doesn't work. And it happens sometimes too.
Yeah. I like what you said about listening to your body, and for me it just seems like, oh, there's like a deep intuitive feeling, like even though being goal oriented is good in some measure, like my body is saying like this is too fast, or this is too fast, something like that, and like there's where was there.
I'm having a little hard time hearing you, Cindy, just so you know.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, where do I was thinking earlier while you were both talking about your Jesus year, it is the idea of like some like inner conflict between like the survival mechanism identity program and who you are, like what in there underneath all those mechanisms wants to be expressed, and then that inner conflict that ends up showing up externally, like chaos, or like inviting things into our lives that we don't want, or upheaval, and how I mean, for me, just in my life, where that was confusing, was scary, was debilitating or demoralizing, in terms of like especially in places where like it was so hard for me to really identify what I wanted, and to like move forward into having that, and then having the experience of feeling like, yeah, like I wasn't allowed, or something like that, like, or that there was just like something undermining my my desire, and it's just frustrating, it's confusing for me. It was scary, because it started to feel like I've got, I from that I really discovered like I have a pretty strong program that I believe my desire is dangerous, like that it's either going to get me or someone I care about harmed or killed. And so that's a really strong.
But from like my desire is selfish, right? Like not only is it selfish, but it's also harmful for self and others.
Yeah. Yeah, and that one, like for me, I ended up, with my family system, for me, the root of that is, we were poor, there were limited resources. And so that somewhere in there, probably mostly my mom's fear of like she wanted to give me things and then literally couldn't, and then some fear of like, if I give him this thing, then we won't be able to buy this other thing, which is more important. And like how much limbic system, download happens in those moments where like I'm 2 years old and I want a toy at, in the checkout stand, some probably $2 piece of plastic, and she's looking at food stamps in one hand and, a gallon of milk in the other, going, I literally can't get him this $2 piece of plastic that he wants because we won't have a certain amount of food if I spend that money instead. Like there was like real conflict in there that then gets downloaded into my limbic system in my body as now every time. And then so for me, how I ended up seeing it was like, I don't have a lot of approval for my own desire. And so even when I do kind of force it out of my body into the world in the form of a request or something, I don't have acceptance for it. And so then there's a lot of unconscious behavior around how I ask for it, how I go about getting it, which then causes wreckage, and then has it be that I don't get what I want or that there's a cost for asking for it. And then I reinforce the whole thing over again. So it's been a really it's been a really
breaks relationships. Ooh, look at that belief. Whoa.
Yeah, and that was a really long journey of discovery around, just because then I was able to start on a journey of approval, like just approval for like, sometimes what I want is going to be inconvenient for others. Sometimes what I want is a finite thing, and if I get it, someone else can't have it. Like finding some of those places around my desire and my going after my desire where I had to get some approval and acceptance for, like, there's impact. My desire has impact, and that's okay. And how can I stay as aware and conscious of my desire and how I get it and the impact, so that I can stay connected throughout the whole process as possible. But good Lord, I mean, just I have caused, I've caused a lot of wreckage around learning as much as I have about that, and cycled back down into the beliefs that I can't ever have anything I want, like so many times, no matter how many times I thought I learned some lesson about approval. I would just, it would be like the next biggest thing that I would allow myself to have or go for, and I would have the whole same lesson all over again. And I'm like, 87 times, really? I gotta, like, just that.
You keep like a tally count somewhere? I'm pretty sure mine's like up in like the thousands.
Right.
How many? 365, one a day.
Right?
Yeah, like
lesson. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I love like that topic because like for me, there's a lot of entitlement. I have a lot of ingrained entitlement to having what I want, and at the same time, I have a deep belief that I am not worth what I want, and so that's such a tricky freaking combination because it's like it's like, like the overcompensating side and the true side, and kind of that's where a lot of my work is right now, is like, how can I be genuine inside of this, like, functioning out of like entitlement, which comes from a true desire, but meanwhile I'm just functioning in the entitlement. I think because I still have a lot of deep beliefs that like you're still not quite worth what you want, or you're not really worth it, and so that's where a lot of my work is. And also acknowledging that, like, yeah, I am really entitled a lot, and seeing that because my child and my victim, just sees, well, I want what I want and people don't want to give it to me, or why can't I have it? When really it's like I'm kind of demanding it on a level, and it doesn't feel good to people. And so taking responsibility and like really seeing there that like how I create that and how I participate in that cycle.
Mm. Nice. Yeah, thank you.
I think on this topic, I feel like my experience has been really interesting, because early on in my life, I just felt like I got everything I wanted in my life, and um, I just felt like, oh, whatever I put my mind to, I get, and I felt not quite entitled, but I think my experience was that I'm special, and so I have everything I want, I get everything I want, people give me everything I want. And life was good in a lot of ways, as I shared a little bit earlier. What I started noticing is that other people don't have that experience of life. They don't have this experience that, oh, they can have anything they want. And so even though those parts of me felt really good, that got everything that I wanted, a big part of me felt uh, completely disconnected from myself. Maybe I don't even know if I recognize that as much, but more specifically, like disconnected from everyone else around me. I feel like I could not connect with people out there in the world, because anytime anyone shared an experience about like, oh, this is what I'm struggling through, oh, getting this was so much hard work, or oh, I'm experiencing pain, I had like no experience of any of that. I might have had those experiences, but somehow my brain eliminated all of that, and it's just like, look at me, my life is perfect. Like, I to get to the US, I got a visa. Like, I just walked into that visa office and I said like, hey, I am here to apply for a visa, and they were like, here you go, sir. Whereas and I applied for a job at like one of the hottest startups at the time, and they said it used to take like weeks and months, and I walked in the morning, and in the evening they were like, hey, we have a job for you, and we'd love to have you on our team. So I feel like I was able to set goals, um, as you were saying earlier, Este, and accomplish them seemingly easily, and I had no connection with anyone. Like, anytime I told people like, look, this is what I accomplished, and like, look, I accomplished this other goal, nobody had any enthusiasm for any of my accomplishments. At the time, it was like devastating. I'm like, oh my God, like I've worked hard my entire life, and I did this and I did that, and like nobody appreciates what I have.
That's a really powerful noticing, I think, to notice the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I kind of intentionally put myself on a path of self-destruction to be like, how can I empathize and connect with other people who are having these experiences? So, it's kind of ridiculous to think about or say. And so what happened was I like started to slack off in all aspects of my life. Because I was like 80% of what I do is like already way better than what most people do in their life. And people are like amazed at what I can do. So I'm like, okay, let me just like chill, relax, see what happens. And that was just a slippery slope. You just like slack a little bit, and you slack a little bit, and you slack a little bit, and then it's just like, whoa, and that was in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it's really hard to know why things happen. Sort of led me to the injury that I was talking about. That, in some ways was like a deep low point in my life. And it felt like I had no control over this thing. Anytime I tried to do stuff that you're supposed to do to recover, does nothing. You know, there's no goals I can set. There's no path I can follow. There's no protocol I can do. Even when I like, because no matter what I do, I try all these things, nothing changes. And I was like, wow, I don't even know what I was thinking. I was just like, this is ridiculous. Until I met and started working with this life coach and started paying attention to my intuition and started paying attention to listening to my body and listening to myself and listening to the universe and listening to, you know, whatever was speaking around me. And you know, I had one of those Burning Man experiences where I was like, oh, this is like a good petri dish of experimenting and experiencing with trust, because it's so much harder to do in everyday life. But here at Burning Man, people say you can trust and have things come true. And I did, and all kinds of amazing things happened when I trusted. And so I slowly started to integrate that trust in my everyday life. And that started to shift how I created goals, how I thought about. I mean, I don't think I even created goals anymore. I started to shift that more into intentions for my life, intentions for how I want to experience life, intentions for how I want to feel, intentions for how I want to connect with people, intentions for how I want to relate to people. And sharing and coming from that place of authenticity, of inner connection, of, I don't know, these just sound like words, but I think, you know, I ended up taking a workshop that sort of taught me on how to be myself, because I was very afraid to be myself. Up until that point, I was just like trying to play this person that I thought everyone thought I was, you know, some like perfect good boy who needed to do all these things. And I think that added to this layer of disconnection from people. And when I started to recognize that I could be myself and that people would like me and would want to engage with me and want to hang out and enjoy life with me, things started to shift. And then that connection came from me sharing my pain, sharing my struggle, sharing, you know, the stuff that I was going through with other people, just created this connection with people that I had not experienced in my life before, with all my perfect accomplishments and perfect ways of living life. And so, you know, sort of tying it back to how do you create goals and intentions, I think one of my goals and intentions has been to create a life of interdependence, which still feels challenging to me. You know, how can I
kind of
yeah.
interrupt, and we're just at the top of the hour, and I was trying to find like some spot where I could, you know, stick the landing with you. But it's always awkward. So we're at the top of the hour, and so it's just time for us to. Yes, dear. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You're always awkward.
Yeah.
Everyone has permission to be awkward when they're around me, because I'm awkward. How Dobby.
There you go.
Yeah, we're just at the top of the hour. It's time to wrap it up. As the great Dave Chappelle once said on his show. So, and I don't have a wrap it up box, so I have to do it verbally. And so this is the time of the show where we just each, if we have one, give like a takeaway or a final thought, or the last thing we want to say about today's topic as we wrap up the show. So we do popcorn style. If you have one, give one. If not, we will close out.
I'll start. I think the thing that popped in my head is when you have challenges, one of the big things to do is what Cindy kind of, I feel, is doing, is just like be in the pain and be like, oh my God, like, why the hell is this happening to me? And be okay with that part, because I've had so much struggle in just being in that moment of complaining, because doing that will get you to this other side where you can then ask that question like, oh, how is this happening for me? And then turn it around and look at it more positively and move on. So being both of those sides are really important.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've appreciated this conversation. Thank y'all. And yeah, I really love what you said about creating a life of interdependence. I think that's just a beautiful intention. Yeah. So we need each other. We need connection.
Yeah. Sucks.
I can't just be in a bubble on my own with cats, maybe.
No.
I mean, I was just going to finish that up by saying, one of the big reasons I left India to move to the US was to learn how to be independent, because India is such a social country where everyone's constantly working with each other. There's no independence. And I was like, I'm going to go to the US, the land of freedom and independence, and learn how to be independent. And, look what I got myself into.
Now you're in San Francisco, creating community.
Yeah, I mean, I would just piggyback on what Anubhav said, which is for me the hallmark is kindness, loving kindness. We can't avoid chaos and friction in life. There's just a certain amount of it, and often it is something inside of us that's trying to get out here, and then it's our survival mechanisms, our identity programs that are kind of trying to keep us in here, to keep us safe, and there's a lot of conflict and chaos and friction inside of that. And whatever you can do to be kind to yourself as that unfolds, to me is one of the most important things, because it's gonna happen. There's no way around it. Somebody's just gonna back their car into you, and you have no control over that fucking moron backing their car into you.
It was the truck.
And then all of your stuff around, all that stuff from childhood, especially if you had a parent who blamed and shamed you constantly for their own shortcomings, is going to come up in that moment, even though that person, you don't know that person. And so the hardest part is just to be kind to yourself in those moments. And for all of you out there, and especially my friend Cindy, my wish is that you find ways to be kind to yourself as it unfolds, because this too shall pass.
I wanted to say one quick thing on that, Keith. One thing I've noticed about myself lately is I think that I'm being kind to myself sometimes, when really I'm just being self-aware. Sometimes I feel like I have the awareness of it, so I'm automatically, okay, I'm being kind with myself and compassionate. But I'm realizing that's actually a next step. It requires a little more work. And I've heard that reflection lately, so want to be kinder and not just notice. That's
a really great distinction.
There's one more thing I wanted to add to that is Cindy, it's I sometimes say jokingly, enjoy it while it lasts, because this too shall pass.
Yeah.
It's harder to be in there.
Next level, guys. next level. I think I have to be an alien here.
Did you have anything, Cindy, or do you want Joey?
No, I'm just in the thick of it. I hear you guys, and I'm in shock right now. So
Yeah.
thank you for your reflections and all that.
So Este, do you have anything that you want to offer this week, and just kind of keep it short and put a link in the comments for the video on the page?
Yeah, I have a page on Facebook, Este for Self-Love. I offer like private coaching sessions, meal prepping, things like that. So if you're interested, send me a message. I also have an Instagram, which is Este for Self-Love, if you want to check that out.
I love that your brand is like really holistic when it comes to self-love. Like you got like meals and you got fitness, and you got coaching. Like there's a very kind of a whole body, whole self thing you've got going on, and I really like it.
Thank you.
Anubhav, do you have any offerings or anything that you'd like to just say briefly, and then maybe put a link to in the comments?
Yeah, sure. So as Jain introduced me, I'm passionate about helping other people create, essentially take an idea, which everyone in Silicon Valley around the world has, to, do what they love. I help people who actually take their idea and grow it into a real business so that they can make money with it full time and replace their full-time income and quit their job. I am leading a founder bootcamp coming up later this month and throughout the year. So I love for people who are committed to creating their own business and actually being successful, because 9 out of 10 businesses fail, and I help change that percentage to a much better number.
And there's a link to where people can find some of this stuff with you?
Yeah, so I'll share a link with where you can schedule some time with me to, if you're interested in your idea and getting some help, schedule some time with me and I'll share that link.
All right. All righty. Well, I think that's it this week then. And we will be here next week with 2 more guests and a whole nother show. I think unless we have anything else, we can just say goodbye. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for being on with us. It was a great show, great talk. Appreciate you. And we will see you all next week.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, thank you.
Podcast.
Bye.